Hello, I'm Edward Carter, the Vicar at St Peter Mancroft Church in Norwich. I'm here in my garden on a lovely summer's day, and I'd like to share a few thoughts today about a book that I'm pretty confident you'll have heard of, even if you haven't actually read it. It's a book called The Lord of the Rings, and I've got here my 3-volume copy of it, which very dog-eared, dates back I think to the 1970s, this copy, which I had as a child and enjoyed reading. The book itself was published earlier than that, in the 1950s, although its genesis lay even earlier. A book called The Hobbit, which was a children's story really, written by the author J R R Tolkien, was published in the late 1930s and was very popular indeed. Hobbits are made up human beings really, but a made up race, shorter, sturdy, in many ways exemplify much that's good about being alive, although they have their complications. And The Hobbit was a great success, and the publisher, as publishers do, said to Tolkien, please write a follow-up, write a Hobbit Part 2. And he did have some ideas for that, and he had other things he was working on. He taught at Oxford University, and he was very interested in languages, philosophy as well, religion, but he had a full teaching load, and so he was really fitting it in around his other commitments, and he struggled to write something quickly. He had different ideas as a long and complex account of how with the publishers there was a bit of toing and froing, but in the end, in the 1950s, The Lord of the Rings, as it came to be titled, was published actually in 3 parts. For reasons of economy, the publishers were very worried that it wouldn't sell, so they were very cautious and said to him, we won't give you an advance, we'll cover our costs, and then we'll pay you a share of any profits. In the unlikely event that it makes any profit, we'll pay you a share of those. Well, of course, it's proved to be hugely popular. It was popular even after it was written, and certainly by the time of the 1970s it was being published in editions like this, such as the one I've got here. It was very influential in terms of the whole fantasy genre, and then its popularity grew hugely in the early 2000s with the issuing of the films, Peter Jackson films. And if you've not read the book, you might have seen those films. They won lots of Oscars and were filmed in New Zealand famously, and were tremendous, very long. Anyway, the books, much has been written about them, much has been said about them. What do they really mean? Like many books, they mean whatever you interpret them to mean, although Tolkien himself said he didn't write them as a particular allegory of, for example, the dropping of the nuclear bomb or any other things that have been suggested. He said that they could be approached in a much more open way than that. In the books themselves, which doesn't come across in the films, there's much about the different languages and the different races. Tolkien himself was of another era, so they're rather masculine in feel. All the characters really are male, all the lead characters. It's been suggested, and I think rightly so, that it's very structured and almost feudal. The class structure system is really written into the books. Notwithstanding all of that, they're powerful stories, and of course, as has often been suggested, they give an account of the battle between good and evil. The forces of good represented in various different ways, above all else by the hobbits, Frodo and Sam, who take the ring of power, which in a way represents all that's fallen about the human race. They take the ring of power, which corrupts all who wear it, to the only place where it can be destroyed. And some have seen this as an allegory of Jesus Christ taking the sin of the world to the cross and there destroying it. I'm not going to really speak about that anymore because loads of other people have, and that's not really for me why these books are so enjoyable and why they possibly might speak of the spiritual dimension and matters of faith. I want actually, bizarrely, to speak of a particular character in the book who didn't make it into the films, the Peter Jackson films, was just trimmed out. I suppose even though the films were 3 hours long each, 9 hours of film, there wasn't space for this character. And this character is called Tom Bombadil. He appears quite early in the first of the books, The Fellowship of the Ring. He appears at the point when Frodo with Sam and Merry and Pippin, two other hobbits, are escaping from the Shire where hobbits live with the Ring of Power, which Bilbo Baggins had found in the book The Hobbit. And they've been told to take this ring to somewhere safe. It's a dangerous thing, it's got to be taken somewhere safe. And they think they're heading for a place called Rivendell. They do go there to start with. But on that journey to try and take this ring to its place of safety, which turns out in the end to be its place of destruction, on that journey they meet this mysterious character, Tom Bombadil. And Tom Bombadil, what does he represent? I think he represents something wise and something uncorrupted, something foolish and full of life, but not foolish, all at the same time. He's a mysterious character. He taps into something very fundamental, foundational, I feel, about what it is to be alive. He's in tune with nature, with the place where he lives, perfectly in tune, is how I read it anyway. And Frodo and Sam come across him, and somehow he gets to borrow the ring of power, which is supposed to be kept hidden secretly away. He gets to borrow the ring and to put it on. Now, when anyone puts the ring on, including the greatest of kings, the mightiest of wizards, even the humblest of hobbits, when any of them put the ring on, gradually it begins to corrupt them. And it turns them invisible as well. It's a very useful ring because it made Bilbo invisible just when he needed to be invisible, back in the book The Hobbit in particular. And sometimes Frodo uses it to go invisible as well. And even Sam gets to be the ring bearer at one point. But all of them, in their different ways, are affected by the ring in quite a powerful way. And they are corrupted by it. And the evil Lord Sauron is the one who really wants to get his hands on the ring. He, in a way, represents the power of evil. And he knows that if he gets the ring, that'll be it. He'll win. But Tom Bombadil is above all of this. He pops the ring on, isn't turned invisible by it, happily gives it back again, seems untroubled by it. And I love that, because it speaks to me of the way in which the Christian faith talks of God being above even good and evil. The Christian God isn't actually battling against an equal and opposite power. The Christian God, in a mysterious way, is above even this wrestling match between good and evil that we find within ourselves as human beings, and that we very, very much find within the world. The Christian God is above all of that. Somehow, in a mysterious way that we can barely understand, God holds all of this wrestling of good and evil, all of this discovering what life is, how it plays out. He holds all of this. He sets the framework for all of it. And I think Tom Bombadil just captures that beautifully, only for a few pages in this great trilogy, this great book. At the end of the book, there is a kind of idyllic ending, maybe not idyllic, but a good ending, in that the ring is destroyed and the hobbits get to go back to their home. That's a strong theme there as well. They go back as a troubling final part of the book, when they go back and discover their home has been disrupted, but they're able to restore it. And many have pointed out that Tolkien grew up in the Black Country around Birmingham, and he loved the natural world around him, but saw the power of the Industrial Revolution around him as well, and some feel it's illustrative of all of that. But although there's that ending, and there's a mysterious ending where some of the characters go across the water to somewhere, some place, perhaps the kingdom of heaven, I don't quite read it that way myself. But nonetheless, when I consider these books, and there are many, many other things within them, many characters, many stories, many battles to be fought, many relationships to be forged. When I read these books, I always come back to Tom Bombadil. Why he got left out of the films, I just don't know. You could remake this book as a film and almost make him the central character with a bit of artistic license. So if you've not read the books, I'm not quite sure whether to recommend them to you because they're long, full of poetry and elven script. If you've not seen the films and you like big action films like that, fantasy films, I'm sure you'll love them. But if you do read the books, look out for Tom Bombadil. Notice how this great object of power doesn't affect him. And perhaps long, as I do, for that gift to be given to you and to us as well and to the world.